One of the things that that we also want to talk to you about is interspersed through the conversation we're having, you will begin to see some of the output materials that we've used to try to simplify and make visual what we're talking about in terms of how different segments, profiles of the population respond to messaging and to advertising. You will see a series of grids throughout this as we're talking about the comparison between product A, product B, etc. Just think about this. If it's highlighted in green, there's a higher propensity for that profile to do or use whatever it is, product or category that we're talking about. So when you see green, it pops. Those are the differentiated places. If you look there, those are the people, and that this particular product category, whatever it is we're showing to you, is more likely to respond to positively. If you want to look at a more in-depth discussion of what the actual constructs underlying this are, why it works the way it works, how these profiles are constructed, and the genesis of them, where they've come from, how they've been tested, what kinds of variants they explain, and all the good stuff that those of you who are researchers really want to understand, we invite you to click on the separate spot which talks about methodological discussion, and the folks that are the creators of this will give you a more in-depth conversation about how it actually works. I'm talking much more about how to use it and how it changes things because of how unique it is as a product, but if you want to understand it, go there. What we've done today, and what we're trying to accomplish with the series of videos that you see on our screen here, is give you a taste of what the possibilities are using the Xyte profiling techniques. We fundamentally believe there's something very exciting here. I've been in the market research industry for 30 years, and a lot of us have been looking for the why. How do we explain why people make the decisions that they make? Why does a friend of mine not shop at Jewel because she doesn't like the color orange? How do you get there? Right? The only way you can get there is understanding who that person is and how their input senses operate, how they take in information, how they consider information, how they make choices, how they describe, and how they would prefer people talking to them so that they understand what's going on. You hear me refer to the, I'm going to go in a different direction now. You hear me refer to the grid frequently, and it's something that is it's a very simple 16 different ways in which we can describe people, describe the behavior of people. The interesting thing about this is you're not one or the other. You are one. You fit uniquely in one of the segments. Now you've heard me, or you may hear me talk about the body row, the hand row, the word row, the mind row. These are things that are based on fundamental constructs of how the model was constructed. I think about it in terms of short-term, long-term. The bottom two rows are folks that are much more long-term in the way in which they look at the world. The top two rows are much more short-term in terms of the way in which they look at the world, the kind of rewards that they seek, much more likely to go home at the end of the day and leave work behind, because it's about getting this job done and moving on to the next one. Down here, much more likely to bring it home with them and read and be engaged in an intellectual pursuit. There's no judgment of good or bad contained within this grid. You are who you are. And you behave the way you behave for two reasons. One, how you're wired as a human being, how your brain functions, how you hear, how you perceive, what triggers a response in you as a person uniquely different from everybody else, and then all the way you've been raised and what you've been exposed to, and education and environments and how you've eaten and all those kinds of things. Everybody is a unique individual, but there are ways to collectively look at us and understand that there are similarities between the people that are perceived. Here's the way I like to think about it. A 45-year-old white male in Chicago who is a perceive is more similar to a 20-year-old nursing student in California than they are to another 45-year-old male living in Chicago who happens to be an implement. It's an interesting way to think about it. Demography is important. However, these places where we can understand how consumers perceive information and understand the world as it's presenting information to them helps us really be better able to understand how to talk to each of these groups in unique ways in the places where they are by understanding their media habits. And it gives us just a construct within which to understand how to look at and think about the marketing implications of understanding consumer behavior in a fundamentally different way by understanding the way in which we behave based on physiology.